The metal floor rose up to meet Theo with brutal force. Pain exploded through his shoulders as he tumbled forward, barely catching himself before his face struck the dark stone. Behind him, the enormous iron gate slammed shut with a sound like thunder, and the grinding of locks echoed through the vast chamber. The Velkari soldier's voice drifted through the bars. Sleep well with the beast, human child. Morning never comes in the Obsidian Vault. Theo pushed himself to his knees, breathing hard. His prison uniform, little more than rough gray fabric, offered no protection against the cold that seeped up from the stone. He was 13 years old, far from his family, and completely alone in the darkness. 3 weeks had passed since the Velkari warships descended on New Haven Colony. The attack had been swift and merciless. His parents worked the farms on the colony's edge, and he had been helping them harvest when the sky turned black with enemy vessels. He remembered his mother's scream, his father pushing him toward the transport shelter, and then the blinding flash of energy weapons. When consciousness returned, he found himself in the hold of a Velkari ship with dozens of other captured humans. Most were adults destined for labor camps. A few children like himself had been separated for unknown purposes. Until now, that purpose remained a mystery cloaked in shadow and cold stone. A sound emerged from the darkness ahead. Not quite breathing, but something deeper. A rhythmic movement of air that suggested something massive and alive. Theo's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to press himself against the gate, to make himself small and invisible. But there was nowhere to hide. Who walks in my prison? The voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. Each word carried weight and age beyond human comprehension. Show yourself. Small one. Theo's throat felt dry as sand. I am Theo Rayne, human. From New Haven, silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then warmth flooded the space around him, and light bloomed in the darkness. Not harsh and artificial like Velkari technology, but soft and golden like sunrise, filtering through morning mist. The illumination revealed his prison in all its terrible majesty. The chamber stretched upward, into shadows that the light could not penetrate. Massive pillars of black stone supported the unseen ceiling. The walls were carved with symbols that seemed to shift and flow when Theo looked at them directly. But these details barely registered in his mind, because all his attention fixed on the creature before him. The dragon was enormous beyond any scale Theo could comprehend. Its body stretched across the chamber floor like a living mountain range. Scales the color of deep crimson covered its form, each one as large as Theo's hand, catching the golden light and reflecting it in shades of ruby and flame. 4 powerful legs ended in claws that had carved grooves in the stone floor over countless years. Wings, folded tight against its flanks, suggested a wingspan that could blot out the sun, but it was the dragon's eyes that held Theo frozen in place. They were amber pools filled with intelligence and sadness, ancient beyond measure. The vertical pupils focused on him with an intensity that made him feel transparent, as though every thought and fear lay open before this creature's gaze. A human child, the dragon said, lowering its massive head until those eyes were leveled with Theo's face. The Velkari have fallen far indeed if they throw younglings to me as sport. What is your name again? A small one? Theo Rayne, he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. They said you would kill me. A sound emerged from the dragon's throat, a rumbling that shook the air. It took Theo a moment to realize the creature was laughing. If I desired to harm you, young Theo, I would have done so already. I am Ashwyn, last guardian of the flame depths, and I have been prisoner in this place for longer than your entire species has walked the stars. Theo took a cautious step forward. You're a prisoner too? Ashwyn's great head tilted slightly, a gesture almost curious. The Velkari Empire spreads across many worlds, consuming and destroying. My kind, the Draenir, refused to bow to their conquest. We protected the younger species, taught them to live in harmony with planetary energies. For this crime, the Velkari hunted us. Most of my brothers and sisters fell in the Great War. I alone survived, trapped in this vault beneath their capital city. But why? Theo asked, moving closer despite his lingering fear. Why keep you alive? The dragon's eyes seemed to glow brighter, because this chamber sits atop something the Velkari value above all else: the planetary core energy nexus. They built their greatest city here to harvest that power, never understanding its true nature. And they placed me here believing I would wither and fade. Instead, Ashwyn continued, I have spent these long years connected to the planet's heart, gathering strength and waiting. The Velkari think they imprisoned a beast. They failed to realize they placed a guardian exactly where he needed to be. Theo's mind raced with questions. But one rose above the others. Waiting for what? For someone like you? Ashwyn said softly. Human minds work differently than any other species. Your consciousness resonates with frequencies we dragons cannot touch alone. With your help, young Theo, we could do more than escape this prison. We could challenge the Empire itself. The weight of those words settled on Theo's shoulders like a physical burden. I'm just a kid. I don't have any special powers. I just want to find my family, Ashwyn's expression, as much as a dragon could show expression, softened with something like compassion. I understand your heart, young one. Know this. If you help me escape, finding your family will be merely the beginning. The Velkari have taken much from both of us. Together, we might reclaim what was lost. Theo thought of his parents, of the colony burning, of the screams as families were torn apart. He thought of the cold cruelty in the Velkari soldiers' eyes as they herded children onto transport ships. A spark of something hot and fierce ignited in his chest. Not quite anger, not quite hope, but something between the two. What do I need to do? Theo asked. Ashwyn's eyes gleamed with approval. First, you must learn. The ways of energy, of connection, of seeing beyond what your eyes show you. The Draenir accumulated wisdom over millions of years. I will share what I can, but the learning will be intense. Do you have the courage? Theo squared his shoulders, looking directly into those ancient amber eyes. Teach me everything. The dragon's rumbling laugh filled the chamber once more, but this time it carried notes of genuine warmth. Then we begin now. Theo Rayne, place your hand upon my scales and open your mind. What happens next will change you forever. As Theo reached out and pressed his palm against the warm crimson scales, he felt a jolt of energy surge through his body. The chamber seemed to spin, and then his consciousness expanded outward in ways he never imagined possible. He could feel the stone beneath his feet, the air around him, and deeper still, the pulse of the planet's core far below, in that moment of connection. Theo understood that his life had split into two distinct chapters. Everything before this touch belonged to the frightened child from New Haven Colony. Everything after would belong to something new, something the galaxy had never seen. The Velkari had made a terrible mistake. Throwing a human boy to their imprisoned dragon, they had created the very catalyst that would bring their empire to its knees. And in the Obsidian Vault, far beneath their gleaming capital, that transformation had just begun. Days blurred together in the Obsidian Vault, though Theo suspected weeks had actually passed. Time lost meaning in the constant golden glow that Ashwyn maintained within their prison. The dragon had explained that this light came from within, a manifestation of life energy that all Draenir possessed. Learning to perceive and manipulate such energy became Theo's first lesson. Each morning, if morning even existed in this timeless place, Theo would wake on a bed of soft moss that Ashwyn had somehow coaxed from the stone floor. The dragon would already be awake, those amber eyes watching with patient intensity as Theo stretched and prepared himself for another day of instruction. Close your eyes, Ashwyn would say. Feel the stone beneath you. Everything carries energy, a signature unique to its nature. Stone is patient and strong. Water flows and adapts. Fire transforms and purifies. You must learn to hear these silent songs. At first, Theo felt nothing but frustration. He would sit cross-legged for hours, palms pressed to the cold floor, straining to sense something beyond the physical hardness of rock. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, awareness began to bloom. A faint warmth here, a subtle vibration there, and eventually a deep thrumming that seemed to come from far below, like the heartbeat of the world itself. Excellent. Ashwyn had rumbled when Theo first gasped at sensing the planetary core. You'll learn faster than any student I have known. Your human mind, so quick and adaptive, drinks in knowledge like parched earth, receives rain. But physical training formed only part of Theo's education. The dragon also shared stories, vast tapestries of history that stretched back millions of years. Theo learned of the Draenir civilization at its height, when hundreds of dragons worked in harmony with countless younger species, teaching them to live sustainably with their worlds. We were never conquerors. Ashwyn explained one evening as they rested. We were gardeners, tending the growth of civilizations as one tends growing plants. We showed them how to draw energy from their planets without depleting the source, how to travel between stars without scarring space itself. What happened? Theo asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. The dragon's eyes dimmed with ancient sorrow. The Velkari happened. They began as one species among many that we guided, brilliant, ambitious, and hungry for more than sustainable growth could provide. They demanded we teach them shortcuts, ways to harvest power quickly regardless of consequences. When we refused, they turned against us. A new presence suddenly interrupted their conversation. From the shadows beyond Ashwyn emerged another dragon, smaller and more slender, like scales that shimmered like liquid silver in the golden light. Theo jumped to his feet, startled by this unexpected appearance. Peace, young human, the new dragon said, her voice melodious and gentle compared to Ashwyn's rolling thunder. I am Seris, healer and keeper of living things. I have shared this prison with Ashwyn for 3 centuries. Though we maintain separate corners of this vast chamber, Theo looked between the 2 dragons, confusion clear on his face. There are 2 of you here? Ashwyn's expression showed what might have been amusement. The Velkari believed they imprisoned 1 dragon. They never bothered to search the deeper recesses of the Obsidian Vault. Seris is hidden well, and I have kept their attention focused solely on me. Seris moved closer, her silver scales catching the light in mesmerizing patterns. I have watched your progress with interest, Theo Rayne. Your ability to bond with Ashwyn's consciousness exceeds anything I have witnessed. Most beings would have been consumed by the intensity of Draenir awareness. Yet you maintain your sense of self while embracing the connection. Remarkable. Theo felt heat rise to his cheeks at the praise. I'm just trying to learn so I can help my family. Noble intent, Seris said, lowering her elegant head to study him more closely. But you are becoming something more than you realize. The bond between human and Draenir has never existed before. You are creating a new possibility in the universe. Over the following days, Seris joined their training sessions. Where Ashwyn taught strength and perception of energy, Seris taught healing and growth. She showed Theo how to accelerate the natural healing of wounds, how to encourage plants to flourish even in impossible conditions, and most importantly, how to sense the health of living ecosystems. All life is connected. Seris explained as Theo successfully healed a small cut on his arm through focused intent. Energy flows between living things in vast networks. The Velkari see only individual pieces to exploit. We Draenir understand the whole tapestry. Theo absorbed these lessons with growing wonder. His abilities expanded daily. He could now sense the emotional states of both dragons, the flow of power through the planetary core far below, and even catch glimpses of energy signatures beyond their prison walls. The Velkari fortress above them blazed in his expanding awareness like a bonfire of stolen power. But this growth came with disturbing realizations. One evening, as Theo practiced energy manipulation under Seris's watchful gaze, he suddenly gasped and fell to his knees. The planet, he whispered, horror filling his voice. It's dying. Both dragons grew very still. Ashwyn spoke first, his voice heavy. You can sense it now. Yes, young one. The Velkari have been draining this world's core energy for 200 years. They harvest power to fuel their expanding empire, heedless of the damage they cause. How long? Theo asked, already dreading the answer. Seris's silver eyes reflected deep sadness. Perhaps 50% of your years before the core destabilizes completely. When that happens, the this entire planet will tear itself apart. The Velkari will simply move to another world and repeat the process. Rage built in Theo's chest, hot and fierce. We have to stop them. We cannot stop them from within this prison, Ashwyn said gently. Which is why escape becomes not merely about our freedom, but about the survival of billions of lives across the Empire's domain. Theo stood, fists clenched at his sides. Then we need to escape now, today. Why are we waiting? Ashwyn and Seris exchanged a long look, silent communication passing between them. Finally, Ashwyn spoke, because escape alone accomplishes nothing. If we simply flee, the Velkari will hunt us across the stars. We need something more. We need you to complete your transformation. What transformation? Theo demanded. Seris rose gracefully. The full merging, young human. Until now, you have touched our consciousness like one standing at the shore of an ocean. To truly challenge the Velkari Empire, you must dive into those depths completely. Your human awareness must unite fully with our Draenir wisdom. The prospect terrified and thrilled Theo in equal measure. What would that do to me? Ashwyn moved closer, his massive presence somehow comforting rather than threatening. You would remain yourself. Your memories, your personality, your humanity intact, but you would also carry within you the accumulated knowledge of our entire species. More importantly, you would become a bridge. Something that can unite not just human and Draenir, but all the species the Velkari have oppressed. And if something goes wrong? Theo asked quietly. The dragons did not lie to him. It is possible you could be lost in the merger. Your consciousness might dissolve into ours, unable to maintain separate identity. But Seris and I believe your mind is strong enough. We have seen your resilience. Theo thought of his parents, somewhere in the labor camps above. He thought of New Haven colony burning. He thought of this dying planet and all the others that would follow if the Velkari continued unchecked. The choice seemed clear, even if the risk was enormous. I'll do it, he said firmly. Tell me what I need to do. Are you certain? Seris asked gently. Once begun, the process cannot be stopped or reversed. Theo met her silver gaze without flinching. I'm certain. The preparation took another full day. Ashwyn and Seris taught Theo meditation techniques to strengthen his sense of self, gave him mental anchors to hold on to when the merger began, and explained as best they could what he would experience when the moment finally arrived. Theo sat between both dragons in the center of the chamber. Above them, he could now perceive the energy conduits that ran through the fortress, glowing lines that drew power from the planetary core. Remember who you are, Ashwyn instructed. When the flood of memory and knowledge comes, hold tight to your name, your family, your purpose. Seris added her own guidance. You are the bridge, Theo Rayne. Not dragon, not human. But something beautifully new. Theo took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and opened his mind completely. The merger began as a trickle. Gentle streams of draconic consciousness flowing into his awareness. He felt Ashwyn's fierce protective nature, his grief for fallen kin, his determination to see the Velkari brought to justice. He felt Seris's compassion, her deep connection to all living things, her hope that the galaxy might still be healed. Then the trickle became a river, and the river became a flood. Millions of years of memory crashed into Theo's mind. He saw the first Draenir taking flight on their ancestral world, felt the joy of discovering other species among the stars, witnessed the slow corruption of the Velkari from students to conquerors. The sheer volume of information threatened to sweep away his identity entirely. Theo. Ashwyn's voice cut through the chaos. Hold on. Remember yourself. Theo grasped desperately for his anchors. His mother's laugh, his father's strong hands, the smell of growing things in New Haven's gardens. His own name, his own face, his own heart. Slowly, painfully, he asserted his identity against the flood of draconic consciousness. And then something unexpected happened. Instead of drowning in the merger, Theo found himself directing it. The human part of his mind, quick and adaptive as Ashwyn had said, began organizing the draconic knowledge, filing it, integrating it, making it accessible without being overwhelming. His consciousness expanded but did not dissolve. The two dragons gasped in unison as they felt the shift. "Impossible," Seris breathed. "He's not just receiving our knowledge. He's transforming it into something new." Power unlike anything Theo had ever imagined flooded through him. He could feel the entire fortress above, sense every Velkari soldier, perceive the flow of stolen energy through their technology. Beyond that, he felt the dying planet crying out in pain. His eyes opened and both dragons recoiled slightly. Theo's eyes now glowed with golden light identical to their own. "How do you feel?" Ashwyn asked cautiously. Theo stood, and energy crackled around his small human frame. "I feel everything. The planet, the fortress, the connections between all living things, and I know what we need to do." A sound from above interrupted them. Footsteps, dozens of them, echoing through the corridor beyond their chamber. Then a voice, harsh and commanding, rang out. "Seal all exits," General Draxus ordered. "The prisoner exhibits unusual energy signatures. Increase suppression field strength immediately." "They know something has changed," Seris said urgently. Theo tilted his head. Perceiving the Velkari soldiers gathering outside their prison with perfect clarity, "Let them come. It's time we left this place anyway." Ashwyn's eyes gleamed with fierce pride. "Then let us show the Velkari what they have created by throwing a human child to dragons." The time for hiding had ended. The transformation was complete. And in the Obsidian Vault, something new had been born into the galaxy. A force the Velkari Empire never anticipated and could never have prepared to face. The fortress shook with the force of Theo's first strike. He stood between Ashwyn and Seris, his small frame wreathed in golden energy that pulsed with the heartbeat of the planet itself. Above them, the massive stone ceiling that had held them prisoner for so long began to crack. "General," Draxus's voice screamed through communication devices. "All units converge on the Obsidian Vault. Deploy suppression weapons. Do not let them escape." Theo raised his hands, and the energy responded to his will like an extension of his body. The cracks in the ceiling widened, spreading in geometric patterns that followed the natural stress lines in the stone. This was not destruction born of anger, precision guided by the Draenir understanding of how matter itself was constructed. "Beautiful," Seris whispered, watching her student work. "You wield power with the delicacy of a healer." Ashwyn was less poetic. "The suppression field is activating. We have perhaps 30 seconds before it reaches full strength." Theo nodded, his perception already tracking the electromagnetic pulse designed to disrupt energy manipulation. "Then we leave now." He thrust both hands upward, and the ceiling exploded outward in a controlled burst. Massive stone blocks flew skyward, tumbling through the air before crashing down in the fortress courtyard far above. Sunlight, real sunlight that Theo had not seen in months, poured down into the Obsidian Vault. "Fly," Ashwyn roared, his wings snapping open for the first time in centuries. The Crimson Dragon launched himself upward with surprising speed for something so massive. Seris followed, her silver form more graceful, but no less powerful. Theo felt their intent to carry him. But the merger had changed him in ways even the dragons had not anticipated, drawing on both human ingenuity and Draenir knowledge. Theo wrapped himself in a cocoon of directed energy and flew. The sensation defied description. He was not truly flying as dragons did, with wings catching air. Instead, he manipulated the planet's energy field itself, creating currents that bore him upward. He shot through the opening behind his companions, emerging into chaos. The fortress courtyard swarmed with Velkari soldiers. Energy weapons fired from every direction, bolts of superheated plasma converging on the escaped prisoners. Ashwyn roared a challenge, his massive body intercepting blasts meant for Theo and Seris. The dragon's scales, hardened by centuries of energy absorption, turned aside the weapons with minimal damage. Seris moved with liquid grace, her smaller size allowing her to dodge rather than endure. She called out to Theo, "The labor camps are 3 kilometers northeast. Can you sense them?" Theo's expanded awareness reached out, touching the minds of thousands of imprisoned beings. Humans, yes, but also a dozen other species all enslaved by the Velkari, and among them 2 familiar signatures that made his heart soar. "My family," he gasped. "They're alive." "Then we free them all," Ashwyn declared, banking sharply to avoid a massive cannon emplacement. Today, the Velkari learned that their empire is not invincible. But General Draxus had not achieved his position through cowardice or incompetence. As the 3 escapees cleared the fortress walls, a new sound filled the air. The whine of atmospheric fighters, dozens of them, rising from hangars across the military complex. Seris's voice carried alarm. "Theo, can you shield us all?" Theo reached deep into the bond he now shared with the dragons, drawing on their combined strength. A shimmering barrier materialized around all 3 of them, a dome of golden energy that moved with them as they flew. The first wave of fighter weapons struck the shield and dissipated harmlessly. Impossible. Draxus's voice crackled over open channels. "No single being possesses such power." Ashwyn's rumbling laugh rolled across the sky. "You imprisoned a guardian with a human child, Velkari. Did you truly think there would be no consequences?" They raced across the fortress city, Theo's shield deflecting hundreds of weapons blasts. Below them, Velkari citizens fled in panic, having never imagined that anything could challenge their empire's military might. The labor camps appeared ahead, sprawling complexes surrounded by energy fences and guard towers. Theo's perception locked onto his parents' location. His voice shook with emotion. "Southwest corner, 3rd building from the perimeter." "I see it," Seris responded. "Ashwyn, can you breach the fence?" The Crimson Dragon needed no further invitation. He folded his wings and dove, building tremendous speed, before crashing directly into the camp's main gate. The impact sent shockwaves rippling outward, and the energy fence flickered and died. Alarms shrieked across the compound. Velkari guards rushed from their posts. Weapons raised, but Seris landed among them with surprising gentleness. She released a pulse of energy that did not harm the guards, but instead rendered them unconscious, their weapons clattering to the ground, merciful, even in combat. Ashwyn observed with approval. Theo descended into the camp, his feet touching ground for the first time since the escape. All around him, prisoners emerged from barracks, faces showing confusion, hope, and fear in equal measure. He spotted movement in the building Seris had indicated, and then 2 figures burst through the door. "Theo!" His mother's scream of joy and disbelief carried across the entire compound. For a moment, Theo was simply a 13-year-old boy running to his parents. They collided in a fierce embrace, his mother sobbing, his father's arms crushing him close. Words tumbled out in a rush of questions and relief. But the reunion was brief. More fighters screamed overhead, and in the distance, the sound of heavy armor units could be heard approaching. Theo pulled back from his parents, and they gasped at the sight of his transformed eyes. "We need to evacuate everyone now. Can you help organize the prisoners?" His father, a natural leader even in captivity, nodded without hesitation. "Everyone, listen to me. We're being rescued, but we need to move quickly. Gather the children, help the injured, form groups." Theo's mother stared at her son, seeing both the boy she knew and something far greater. "What happened to you?" "I'll explain everything later," Theo promised. "Right now, trust me. We're going to end the Velkari Empire's cruelty. But first, we save everyone we can." The evacuation began with remarkable speed. Theo reached out with his enhanced abilities, locating other prison camps within range. Ashwyn and Seris took turns flying to these locations, breaking open gates and leading prisoners to central gathering points. Within an hour, over 2,000 freed prisoners had assembled in a valley beyond the city limits. But General Draxus was far from defeated. His forces had regrouped, and now they surrounded the valley on all sides. Heavy artillery aimed down from the ridges, and the sky darkened with military craft. Draxus's voice boomed from amplifiers. "You have nowhere to run, dragon lovers. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Theo stood at the front of the gathered prisoners, flanked by Ashwyn and Seris. Behind him, his parents and sister Nira, whom he had been overjoyed to find among the freed captives, stood with hundreds of others who looked to them for salvation. The young boy who had been thrown into the Obsidian Vault no longer existed. In his place stood something new, a bridge between species, a channel for ancient wisdom, and a beacon of hope for the oppressed. Theo's voice rang out, amplified by the same energy that powered his flight and shields. "We do not seek your deaths, Velkari. We seek only freedom and justice. Stand down, and no harm will come to you." Draxus's laughter was bitter. "You think we fear one boy and two aging dragons? You are surrounded by the full might of the Velkari military." Theo closed his eyes, reaching deep into his connection with the planet. He felt its pain, the slow death inflicted by centuries of exploitation. But he also felt its strength, the vast reserves of power that even the Velkari's relentless harvesting had not depleted. "Forgive me," he whispered to the world itself. "I will ask you for much, but I promise to heal you afterward." The planet responded. Energy erupted from the ground beneath the assembled forces. Not violent or destructive, but overwhelming in its sheer magnitude. Every Velkari weapon simultaneously overloaded and shut down. Every vehicle lost power. The soldiers themselves, though unharmed, found their strength sapped by the wave of planetary force. Two more dragons rose from distant mountains, drawn by Theo's call. Embers, scales gleaming like molten gold, and Thorn, dark as polished obsidian. They had been hiding like Seris, waiting for the moment when freedom might finally be possible. "You see," Drax's Ashwyn's voice carried across the stunned silence. "You never imprisoned all the Draenir. You merely gathered us together and gave us a catalyst to unite." The four dragons rose into the air above the crowd of freed prisoners, their combined presence magnificent and terrible. Theo floated up to join them, golden energy swirling around his small form. "This ends today," Theo declared, his voice reaching every Velkar soldier. "Every citizen of the fortress city, every oppressed being within hundreds of kilometers. The empire built on exploitation and cruelty ends today. We offer you one chance. Surrender your weapons, release all prisoners across every world you control, and we will work together to heal the damage you have caused. And if we refuse," Draxus called out, though his voice had lost much of its earlier confidence. "Then we will do it without your cooperation," Theo replied simply. "But that path leads to far more suffering for everyone." Silence stretched across the valley. Then, one by one, Velkari soldiers began laying down their weapons. Not all, but enough to start a cascade. Within minutes, the army that had surrounded them was peacefully standing down. Draxus himself finally emerged from his command vehicle, his face showing shock and something that might have been grudging respect. How did a human child become this? Theo descended to stand before the general. "You threw me 2 dragons believing I would die. Instead, I learned what your ancestors forgot. That true power comes not from taking, but from connecting. Not from dominating, but from understanding." The general studied him for a long moment, before removing his own weapon and setting it on the ground. "What happens now?" "Now," Theo said, looking back at the freed prisoners, the 4 dragons, his family, and the broken world around them, "we begin the hard work of rebuilding. The Velkari Empire may end today, but the Velkari people do not have to. Choose peace, choose restoration, and we will teach you the old ways your ancestors abandoned." Ashwyn landed beside Theo, and Seris, Embers, and Thorn formed a protective circle around them. The message was clear. This human child stood under the protection of the Draenir, and through him, a new era was dawning. As the sun set over the valley, casting long shadows from dragons and humans alike, Theo Rayne stood with his hand pressed against Ashwyn's warm scales. The journey from terrified prisoner to bridge between species had transformed him utterly. Yet his core purpose remained unchanged. Protect those he loved, fight for justice, and show mercy even to enemies. The Velkari Empire would fall, not to conquest, but to the awakening of something it had tried to destroy. The bond between human creativity and Draenir wisdom, united at last, would spread across the stars. And it had all begun in the darkness of the Obsidian Vault, where a scared boy met an ancient dragon and discovered that the greatest power in the universe was not found in weapons or technology, but in the courage to connect across all boundaries. The war was not over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Dawn was rising across the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same.